The palace of the Dragon Emperor stood high above the clouds, carved from white crystal and black stone. Its tall towers touched the morning mist, and when the sun rose, their tips burned like fire. To the people below, it looked like a fortress built by gods. But inside, it was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that made even the bravest guards afraid to speak too loud. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and gold, and the soft echo of footsteps carried through endless halls. The Dragon Emperor, Kale Draconis, ruled this place with a gaze sharper than steel. He was a being of power, half dragon, half something greater. His eyes were like molten gold, glowing faintly even in the dark. When he spoke, his voice made the walls tremble. Yet tonight, the palace felt restless. Something unseen moved through the corridors. A feeling of unease, like the whisper of a storm waiting to break. In one of the lower wings of the palace, a human maid worked alone. Her name was Alara, a quiet figure with soft hands and tired eyes. She had been in the Emperor's service for almost 3 years, cleaning halls and polishing armor that gleamed like mirrors. No one paid much attention to her. To most dragons, she was just another servant, small, fragile, and easily forgotten. But Alara had a strange grace about her, something calm even when everything around her was cruel. That night, a great banquet was held in the Emperor's honor. The grand hall glowed with hundreds of fire crystals, floating gently in the air like tiny suns. Dragon nobles gathered at long golden tables, their scales shining in every shade of red, silver, and blue. Music played slow, deep tones that made the air vibrate. Roasted meat, wine, and rare fruits filled the tables. The smell of power and pride filled the hall. Alara moved quietly between the tables, serving drinks, bowing low, never speaking unless spoken to. Her every movement was careful, precise. She had learned the hard way that one wrong move could bring punishment. Dragons were not known for patience, especially with humans. As she placed a silver goblet near the Emperor's table, her sleeve slipped slightly, showing a faint mark on her wrist, something dark against her pale skin. She quickly pulled the fabric down, hoping no one noticed. But Kale did. His sharp eyes caught everything. He said nothing, only watched her for a moment. There was something in the way she moved, too tense, too controlled. When one of the nobles dropped a fork and barked at her, Alara flinched so hard the tray in her hands shook. A few nobles laughed, but the Emperor didn't. His gaze stayed fixed on her, unreadable. When the feast ended, Kale rose from his seat. The room fell silent. Every dragon bowed their heads slightly as he walked past. His long cloak swept across the floor like a shadow. But when he reached the doorway, he stopped. He turned slightly and looked back toward Alara, who was gathering empty plates with trembling hands. "Leave the hall," he said quietly. The words were not harsh, but they carried weight. Alara froze for a second before bowing deeply. "Yes, Your Majesty," she whispered, her voice barely audible. As the hall emptied, Kale remained for a while, alone. The smell of wine and smoke lingered. He looked at the spot where Alara had stood, thinking. Dragons were not known for curiosity about humans. Yet something in that girl's eyes had caught him, something heavy with fear and silence. Later that night, when most of the palace had gone dark, Kale walked through the corridors alone. His steps were slow, his claws clicking against the stone floor. His thoughts were restless. He could feel something strange in the air, like an echo of sorrow. As he passed the servant quarters, he stopped. Through a half-open door, he heard a soft sound, cloth rubbing against stone, the faint clatter of a bucket. He looked inside. Alara was there, kneeling, scrubbing the floor under the dim light of a lantern. Her hands moved quickly, as if she was afraid to stop. Her face was pale, her hair tied back neatly, though strands had fallen loose around her cheeks. Kale didn't speak at first. He simply watched. She didn't notice him, not until her sleeve slipped again and the Emperor saw the truth clearly this time. Her arms were covered with bruises, some old, faded into yellow and green. Others new, dark and sharp, shaped like claws. For a long moment, Kale said nothing. His breath came slow, the faint glow of fire rising behind his eyes. The air around him warmed slightly. Alara turned then and gasped when she saw who was standing in the doorway. She dropped the cloth, instantly kneeling. "Why, Your Majesty! Forgive me. I didn't know." Kale's voice was quiet but heavy, like thunder behind clouds. "Who did this to you?" Her eyes widened. She shook her head quickly. "No one, my lord. I fell. It was my fault." The lie was weak, and both of them knew it. Dragons could smell fear, and she was drenched in it. Kale stepped closer. The lantern's light flickered against his scales, reflecting gold on the walls. "Look at me," he said. Alara hesitated, then slowly raised her eyes. There was terror there, but also something deeper, resignation, as if she had already accepted pain as her fate. Kale felt something inside him shift. It was not pity. Dragons didn't pity humans, but something colder, sharper. A spark of anger, not at her weakness, but at whoever dared harm what was his. "You are a servant of my house," he said slowly. "No one touches what belongs to me." Alara bowed her head again, her voice trembling. "Please, my lord, don't make trouble. It will only get worse." Kale studied her for a long moment. Her words, simple as they were, carried truth. Fear had made her small, but there was strength in her silence. She was protecting someone, or maybe herself. Either way, it was enough to make the Emperor's fire burn hotter. He turned without another word and walked away, his cloak whispering across the stone. The sound of his steps faded into the dark, but his thoughts did not. In all his years of rule, Kale had seen wars, rebellion, betrayal, but never had a single human's pain unsettled him so deeply. As he reached the balcony overlooking the sleeping city below, he looked out at the glowing lights and the dark clouds beyond them. His claws gripped the railing. A storm was coming. He could feel it, not in the wind, but in his heart. Somewhere inside his palace, someone had dared to break his law, to harm one under his protection. That was not weakness. That was treason. The night grew colder, the moon rising behind the towers. From far below, faint sounds of laughter and music drifted up from the lower city, unaware of the fire about to awaken in the Emperor's heart. Kale's eyes glowed brighter now, a reflection of the rage building behind his calm mask. He whispered to himself, voice low and dangerous, "Tomorrow I will find out who touched her. And when I do," the air around him shimmered with heat, "this palace will remember what fear truly is." The wind blew softly through the open hall, carrying the faint smell of smoke. The Dragon Emperor stood still, his golden eyes burning through the darkness. And somewhere deep inside the palace, Alara sat alone, holding her bruised arms, not knowing that her pain had awakened the most dangerous being in the world. The night was silent, but the silence was about to break. The next morning came slowly. The palace of the Dragon Emperor woke under a pale red sky. Guards changed shifts, servants rushed through marble halls, and the great banners of black and gold fluttered high above the towers. But beneath all that beauty, the air felt heavy, like something unseen was watching. Emperor Kale Draconis sat alone in the Hall of Flames, his throne carved from pure obsidian and dragon bone. Firelight flickered behind him, dancing across the walls. He looked calm, but his eyes told another story. They burned brighter than usual, glowing with silent anger. The image of the maid's bruised arms had not left his mind since the night before. Kale was not known for mercy. His enemies feared his fire. His own generals feared his silence. Yet now he felt something strange. Not rage alone, but curiosity. Why would a human servant hide pain instead of asking for help? Why would she protect the one who hurt her? He turned his gaze toward his guard captain, a tall dragon named Rin whose black scales shimmered like oil. Rin bowed deeply, his golden armor clinking softly. "Rin," Kale said, his voice calm but cold, "there is a maid who serves in the lower wings. Her name is Alara. I want you to find out who she serves under, who commands her, who speaks to her, and who punishes her." Rin looked up slightly surprised. "A human, my lord?" Kale's eyes narrowed. "Yes, and if you value your life, Do not ask why. The captain bowed again. It will be done, my emperor. When Rin left, Kale leaned back on his throne. His claws tapped against the armrest, the sound echoing through the hall. The dragons outside whispered, sensing their ruler's mood but not daring to ask. Hours passed before Rin returned. The captain entered the hall, bowing once more. My lord, I found her record. She was assigned to the East Wing under the supervision of Lord Varen's attendants. Kale's gaze darkened. Varen was one of his noble lords, ambitious, proud, and cruel. He had long disliked humans, calling them useful tools. And, Kale asked. Rin hesitated. There were reports, my lord. Some servants disappeared. The attendants said they were sent to other duties, but none were seen again. And Elara. He paused. Kale's voice deepened. Speak. She was punished last week, accused of breaking a vase in Varen's chamber, but witnesses said she wasn't even near that room. For a moment, silence filled the hall. The firelight trembled. Kale rose slowly, his cloak sliding off the throne steps like a dark wave. Bring her to me, he said. Rin bowed quickly and left. In the lower halls, Elara was cleaning the floor again, her hands red from scrubbing. Her small lantern flickered beside her, casting long shadows on the stone. She felt strange today, as if someone had been watching her since morning. Every step in the hallway made her heart beat faster. When the guard captain entered, she froze. 2 soldiers followed him. Elara, Rin said, his tone flat. The Emperor requests your presence. Her eyes widened. And me, my lord? Why? You will speak when spoken to, one of the guards snapped. Elara lowered her head. Yes, sir. They led her through the long corridors, past tall doors and dragon carvings that seemed to stare down at her. She had never been near the throne hall before. Her steps echoed softly. When the doors finally opened, she stopped breathing for a second. The throne room was vast and bright, filled with firelight and gold. At the far end sat the dragon emperor himself, silent, powerful, and terrifying. His golden eyes locked on her the moment she entered. Rin bowed and said, My lord, the maid is here. Kale raised a clawed hand, dismissing him. The doors shut behind them, leaving only the emperor and the maid. For a long time neither spoke. The only sound was the crackle of flames behind the throne. Come closer, Kale said at last. Elara hesitated but obeyed, walking slowly until she stood at the base of the steps. She dared not look up. Do you know why you are here? He asked. She shook her head. No, your majesty. Kale studied her carefully. Her voice was soft but steady, though her hands trembled. He saw fresh bruises along her wrists, faint marks hidden by her sleeves. You were hurt, Kale said simply. Her breath caught. It is nothing, my lord. I fell while working. Kale's eyes narrowed. You are lying. Elara bit her lip, her eyes filling with fear. Please, my emperor, I cannot. Cannot what? His voice thundered, not in anger but in authority. Speak the truth. Tears filled her eyes now, though she tried to hide them. If I speak, they will kill me. Kale's golden eyes flared brighter. Who? She said nothing, only looked at the floor. The emperor stood. His steps were slow as he came down from the throne. The ground trembled faintly under his feet. He stopped before her, his shadow falling over her like a mountain. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of fire. You are under my protection now. No one in this palace will touch you again without my command. Elara looked up, shocked. No one had ever spoken to her that way before, not with kindness, but with power that felt safe. But why? She whispered. I am just a servant. Kale looked down at her, his expression unreadable. Because what is mine will not be broken. He turned to leave, but paused halfway to the throne. You will rest tonight, he said. Captain Rin will assign guards near your quarters. If anyone comes to harm you again, tell them the Emperor knows. Elara bowed deeply, her voice shaking. Thank you, my lord. Kale didn't reply. He only watched as she left the hall, her small figure vanishing beyond the great doors. When she was gone, he stood there for a long time, lost in thought. Something about her words had struck him deeply. They will kill me. Who were they? And how deep did this corruption go inside his palace? He walked to the window, staring at the crimson sky beyond. His reflection glowed faintly on the glass, the image of a dragon trying to understand human pain. He whispered to himself, "Someone in my court dares to defy me, to harm the weak." His claws tightened slightly. "They think I am blind." Outside, thunder rumbled softly across the horizon, though the skies were clear. It was not real thunder. It was the Emperor's heartbeat, echoing through the magic of the palace. Later that night, Alara sat in her small room, wrapped in a blanket. For the first time in years, she was not afraid of the dark. But her thoughts were heavy. She knew the Emperor's protection was a dangerous gift. The ones who hurt her would not stop. They would come again, only smarter, quieter. Still, when she closed her eyes, she saw his golden eyes in her mind. Not cruel, but curious. And for some strange reason, she felt safe. She whispered softly to herself, "Maybe dragons are not all monsters." Outside, unseen, two figures watched her window from the shadows of the courtyard. One of them whispered, "The Emperor knows. We must act fast." The other replied coldly, "Then before dawn the girl disappears." That night, the fire crystals in the palace flickered strangely. Somewhere in the upper towers, Kale opened his eyes again, sensing a disturbance in the air. He looked toward the direction of the servant quarters, and a quiet growl escaped his throat. "Foolish," he murmured, his eyes blazing like twin suns. "They dare test me so soon?" The fire around the throne flared to life, roaring silently, as if answering its master's anger. The Emperor stood tall, his wings unfolding slightly. The silent palace trembled once more. Something dark was coming, and this time, no one would escape the Dragon Emperor's wrath. The palace of the Dragon Emperor was never truly quiet, but tonight the silence felt strange, thick and heavy, like the air before a storm. The guards walked faster, servants spoke in whispers, and even the fire crystals along the walls flickered as if they were afraid. Rumors had begun to spread. They said the Emperor had protected a human maid. They said he had ordered guards near her room. They said he had spoken to her with something that sounded almost like mercy. For dragons, that was impossible. Mercy was weakness. Now the whispers grew like fire through dry grass. In the kitchens, servants traded frightened glances. In the corridors, noble attendants pretended to know nothing. And in the upper chambers, the nobles of the court gathered quietly to talk. Among them sat Lord Varen, tall and cold, his scales shining silver under the lanterns. His yellow eyes burned with irritation as he listened to the gossip. "So," he said slowly, his voice low and cruel, "our mighty emperor has grown soft for a human girl." Another noble chuckled nervously. "They say she's just a maid, my lord. Perhaps he's only curious." Varen leaned back, his wings twitching slightly. "Curiosity kills more kings than swords. If the emperor is distracted, then the court must remind him of his priorities." The room went silent. Everyone knew what Varen meant. In her small room on the lower floor, Alara sat by her window, unable to sleep. The night outside was calm, the moonlight silver against the white stone walls. But her heart was restless. Ever since the Emperor had spoken to her, her world had changed. She was still afraid, but now there was something new inside her. A faint light of hope, a spark she hadn't felt in years. Someone had seen her pain. Someone powerful. She touched the bruises on her arm gently. They still hurt, but somehow they felt lighter now. She whispered to herself, "He said no one will hurt me again." But deep inside, she didn't believe it fully. She had seen what happened to humans who trusted dragons. As she sat there, a soft sound came from the hallway, footsteps. Heavy ones, too heavy for servants. Her heart jumped. Before she could move, the door burst open. Two palace guards entered, their armor gleaming faintly under the lantern light. "You're coming with us," one said flatly. Alara stood quickly, her voice trembling. "Why? The Emperor commands your silence," the other interrupted coldly. "You're wanted for questioning. Come." Something in their tone felt wrong. Kale's guards never spoke like that. Their eyes were cold, their scent sharp with fear and guilt. Still, Alara obeyed. She knew resistance would only bring pain. They led her through the dark corridors, past closed doors and silent halls. The air grew colder as they descended a narrow staircase into one of the storage halls beneath the palace. No fire crystals burned here, only a single torch. Alara's voice shook. "Where are you taking me?" The first guard laughed quietly. "Don't worry, little human. You won't be missed long." Her heart stopped. She understood now these were not Kale's loyal guards. They belonged to Varen. Before she could scream, one of them struck her across the face, sending her to the floor. Her head spun. They grabbed her arms, dragging her deeper into the shadows. But high above, far away, Kale Draconis felt something. The Dragon Emperor sat alone in his chamber, reading ancient scrolls by the light of floating fire. His mind was restless. Every hour since that morning, the same thought returned. "They will kill me." Those words haunted him. He closed the scroll and stood. His golden eyes flickered, sensing something strange in the air, the faint pulse of fear. A dragon's senses were sharper than any human's. He could feel emotions across the palace like ripples in water. And right now he felt terror. Alara's terror. Kale's claws flexed. The fire around him flared brighter. Without a word, he turned and walked out of his chamber. Guards at the entrance looked up, startled. "Your Majesty?" one asked. Kale's voice was deep and cold. "Where is the maid?" The guards exchanged confused glances. "She was in her room, my lord." "2 soldiers said you." "I gave no such order," Kale growled. The air trembled. The torches along the walls burst into flame. "Find her," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "Now." In the dark corridor below, Alara struggled weakly as the guards pulled her toward a locked room. One of them smirked. "This is what happens when you get noticed. The higher you fly, the harder you fall." They threw her inside and closed the door. The sound of metal locking echoed in the small space. Alara crawled to the wall, breathing hard. Her lip bled where they had struck her. She could hear them whispering outside the door, their voices low. "She's done for," one said. "When Lord Varen gives the word, we'll say she ran away." Her body trembled. Tears filled her eyes, but she bit her lip to keep from crying. She had learned long ago crying never helped. Then the ground shook. The guards stopped talking. A deep sound rolled through the stone walls, like thunder. Then another, closer this time. Alara lifted her head. The air grew hot. The torchlight outside flickered wildly. The next moment, the door exploded inward, shattered by an invisible force. Through the smoke and dust, a tall figure stepped into the room, cloaked in black and gold, his eyes burning like fire. The guards fell to their knees instantly. "The Emperor," one stammered, his voice shaking. Kale looked at them, silent. Then his gaze moved to Alara, who sat on the floor, her face pale, blood on her lip. Something inside him snapped. "You dare," he said softly, "to touch what I have claimed as mine?" The air turned to fire. Flames danced across the walls, though they did not burn Alara. The 2 guards tried to speak, but their voices vanished in the heat. Kale stepped forward, his presence filling the room like a storm. "You lied to me, you disobeyed me, and you hurt her." Please, my lord," one began. Kale's eyes flared. Silence. The flames obeyed him. They rose high, surrounding the guards. When Kale spoke again, his tone was calm, too calm. "You serve Lord Varen, don't you?" Neither answered, but the truth was written on their faces. Kale's jaw tightened. "Then you will deliver him a message." He raised one clawed hand. The fire vanished, leaving only the 2 guards, trembling on the ground. "Tell your master," Kale said slowly, "that the next time he touches my will, I will burn his name from the history of dragons. The guards bowed, shaking, and ran out of the room as if death followed them. When they were gone, Kale turned to Alara. His voice softened. Are you hurt? Alara tried to stand but stumbled. Kale caught her easily, one hand steadying her shoulder. His touch was warm, not burning, like sunlight through a window. I'm sorry, she whispered, her eyes wet. I didn't mean to bring trouble. Kale looked down at her. You didn't bring trouble, he said quietly. You revealed it. For a moment, the mighty emperor and the fragile human just stood there, the heat around them fading into calm. Kale spoke again, softly but firmly. From now on, you will stay in the East Wing near my personal guard. No one touches you without my word. Alara nodded weakly. Yes, my lord. Kale turned toward the door, his cloak flowing behind him like smoke. But before leaving, he said one last thing, more to himself than to her. Let them whisper, he murmured. By dawn, they will learn that mercy is not weakness. Outside, the halls were already alive with new rumors. Servants ran to hide, guards spoke in fear, and the fire crystals glowed a deeper red. The emperor's wrath had awakened, and somewhere in the high towers, Lord Varen watched the flames rise in the distance, his lips curling into a cold smile. So, he whispered, the game begins. The night wind howled through the palace gates, carrying whispers that would soon turn into screams. The night after the attack was cold, but inside the Crystal Palace, the air burned with quiet fire. Every corridor whispered the same word, wrath. Guards walked in silence. Servants kept their eyes down. Even the fire crystals that lit the palace seemed dimmer, afraid of the power that filled the air. Everyone could feel it. The emperor was angry. And when the dragon emperor was angry, the world itself trembled. Kale Draconis stood in the Hall of Flames, his massive form half hidden in shadow. Fire danced behind him like restless spirits, casting gold light across his armor. He had not slept. He did not need to. His blood burned hotter than any fire. 2 guards knelt before him, the same ones who had dragged Alara from her room. They now shook like leaves, their heads bowed to the ground. Kale's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and calm, the kind of calm that was more terrifying than rage. Tell me, he said, who gave you the order? The first guard hesitated. My lord, it was Lord Varen's men. We only followed. Kale's golden eyes flashed. You followed treason. The second guard fell to the floor, trembling. Forgive us, Emperor. We did not know. Lies, Kale said softly. You knew. He turned away from them, staring into the flames. His reflection rippled in the firelight, proud, tall, and deadly. You may go, he said at last. Your punishment will find you soon enough. The guards scrambled away, nearly tripping over themselves to escape the hall. When they were gone, Kale closed his eyes. He could still see Alara's frightened face, the blood on her lip, the way she had whispered, I didn't mean to bring trouble. Trouble, he thought bitterly, was already here. Far across the palace, in a high marble chamber, Lord Varen stood before a wide window, staring at the sunrise. His silver scales caught the light, gleaming like blades. Behind him, a group of lesser nobles waited nervously. My lord, one of them said quietly, the emperor has summoned no council this morning. He has not spoken to anyone. That is unusual. Varen smirked. Unusual? No. Dangerous, perhaps, but not unusual. He turned slowly. The emperor has lived too long. Power makes even dragons weak. Sooner or later, he will make a mistake. The noble looked uneasy. And what of the human maid? I heard she was moved to the East Wing, under his guard. Varen's eyes narrowed. Then she's safer than any of us. For now. He leaned closer, his voice turning cold. But the Emperor's protection is not forever. Every dragon has a limit, even him. If she means that much to him, she will become his weakness. He smiled, a sharp, cruel smile. And I know how to break a weakness. By noon, Kale called for his council of lords. When the great hall doors opened, firelight bathed the nobles as they entered. Lord Varen was among the first, his silver scales shining proudly. He bowed low before the throne, his expression calm. "My emperor," he said smoothly, "we are honored by your call." Cale said nothing. His golden eyes swept across the room, measuring every face. Then he rose from the throne and descended the steps slowly, each movement deliberate, like a predator circling prey. "I called you," Cale began, "to speak of betrayal." A murmur spread through the nobles. Varen tilted his head slightly, pretending confusion. "Betrayal, my lord? Surely not within your own court." Cale stopped before him. His shadow fell across Varen's face. "Do not test me." Varen met his gaze, still smiling faintly. "If someone has disobeyed you, my emperor, they deserve punishment. But who among us would dare?" Cale's eyes glowed brighter. "You tell me, Lord Varen." For a heartbeat, silence filled the hall. Then Varen chuckled softly, shaking his head. "My lord, I am loyal to you above all. You know that." Cale's expression didn't change. "Your men attacked a servant under my protection." Varen's smile faded. "A servant? You summoned the council for a human maid." The room went still. Cale's voice deepened, filling the air like thunder. "That human maid was harmed under my roof by my own kind. You call that small?" Varen's eyes flashed with arrogance. "With respect, my emperor, she is still human. We are dragons. Their lives are meant to serve ours. Have we forgotten our place?" The flames behind the throne flared high. Cale's wings unfolded slightly, his voice now a roar that shook the crystal walls. "I will tell you what we have forgotten," he thundered. "Honor, loyalty, justice." He stepped closer, towering over Varen. "You speak of place? Then remember yours, before I remind you with fire." The nobles stepped back, terrified. Varen's smirk faltered, but he forced himself to speak. "So you would threaten one of your lords? For a human?" Cale's answer was quiet, almost gentle. "Not for her. For my rule." He raised one clawed hand, and fire burst to life around him, curling in golden spirals. "You disobeyed my command. You harmed what I declared sacred. That is treason, Lord Varen." Varen's wings flared, anger flashing across his face. "You wouldn't dare." Cale moved faster than sight. In a single step, he was inches from Varen, his golden eyes burning with fury. "I am the Dragon Emperor," Cale growled, his voice like molten metal. "I do not dare. I decide." The fire roared, rising to the ceiling. Varen fell to his knees, choking as the heat pressed down like a storm. Cale lowered his claw, his expression cold as stone. "You are stripped of your title. Your lands, your soldiers, your name gone." The hall shook as his voice echoed. "From this day forward," Cale declared, "Lord Varen is exiled from the Empire. Let the wind and the dark claim him. If he returns, he dies." Guards stepped forward, seizing Varen by the arms. The once proud noble struggled, his face twisted with hate. "You will regret this, Cale Draconis," he spat. "You think you rule fire, but fire always burns its master." Cale turned away, his voice calm again. "Take him away." The guards dragged Varen out of the hall, his shouts fading into the distance. The nobles bowed low, none daring to speak. When the doors closed, silence fell again. Cale stood there, breathing slowly, the fire fading around him. For a long time he said nothing. Then he whispered, "Let them call me merciful now." That evening, Elara stood by a high window in the east wing, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in gold and crimson, beautiful and silent. For the first time in years, she felt safe. But as she watched the glowing horizon, she couldn't shake a strange feeling. A sense that peace never lasted long in places built on power. A soft sound made her turn. Cale stood behind her, his golden eyes reflecting the sunset. She bowed quickly. "Your Majesty." "Look up," Cale said gently. "Do not bow to me when you have nothing to be ashamed of." She hesitated, then met his gaze. I heard what you did today, my lord. You punished the one who hurt me. Kale nodded slightly. Justice was due. Thank you, she said quietly. He studied her face for a moment, then spoke softly. You should rest. The palace is safe tonight. Alara smiled faintly. I hope so. Kale turned to leave but stopped at the door. Alara, he said without looking back. If anyone ever tells you that your life has no worth, remember this day. A dragon burned his own court for you. When he left, Alara stood there for a long time, her heart heavy but warm. She whispered to the empty room. Maybe dragons can feel more than fire. But deep in the mountains beyond the city, Lord Varen stood beneath a black sky, watching the palace lights from afar. His claws dug into the earth, his eyes glowing with hatred. You took my honor, Emperor, he hissed. Now I'll take everything you love. Behind him, shadows moved, shapes of metal and fire, and the faint hum of something ancient awakening. The war had only begun. The palace was calm again. Days passed without the sound of shouting or fear. For the first time, the halls of crystal and flame seemed peaceful. But beneath that silence, something was still wrong. Something unseen, waiting in the dark. Alara walked through the East Wing garden, her soft steps brushing fallen petals. She had been given her own room now, away from the noise of the lower servant quarters. She could see the mountains from her window, glowing gold at sunset. But even in this peace, her heart was heavy. She kept remembering the fire in the Emperor's eyes, the moment he banished Lord Varen, the roar that shook the palace. He had done it for her, a human. No one had ever done that before. And yet, that same night, she woke from a dream. The smell of metal, the sound of machines, the scream of something not human. Her hands shook. She looked down and saw faint marks on her wrists, the old scars she could never hide, the scars of the past. She touched them gently and whispered, "It's not over, is it?" That morning, Kale Draconis summoned her again. When she entered the throne room, the firelight felt softer than before. The Emperor sat not on his high throne, but at a lower seat near the great window. The mountains reflected in his golden eyes. "Alara," he said, "sit." She hesitated, unsure if he was serious. "Your Majesty, I cannot." "I said sit." His tone was calm but final. She obeyed, sitting a few feet away, her hands folded nervously in her lap. Kale studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You still hide something from me." Her breath caught. I don't understand." He leaned forward slightly. "Your wounds. The way you flinched when I mentioned fire. Those scars are not from whips or blades. They are from something else, something older." Alara lowered her gaze. "Please, my lord, don't ask me." "I already am," Kale said. "If danger lies in my palace, I must know." There was silence. Only the low crackle of the fire filled the air. Finally, Alara whispered, "Then I will tell you." She began slowly, her voice trembling. "I was not always a maid, Your Majesty. Before the war, before humans fell, I was a scientist." Kale's eyes narrowed slightly. "A scientist?" "Yes," she said. "I worked in a place called the Core Facility. It was hidden beneath the human capital. We built machines, studied energy, and created weapons." Her voice grew weaker. "Weapons meant to destroy dragons." Kale's tail flicked once, the sound sharp as a whip. "Go on." "I did not want to help them," she said quickly. "But they forced us. We were told the dragons would wipe out humanity. They said if we didn't fight, we would die." She paused, swallowing hard. "So we built something terrible, a weapon that could burn even dragonfire. We called it the Heart of Ash." Kale frowned. "And what happened to it?" Alara's eyes filled with tears. "It was never finished. When the dragons won the war, the facility fell. I thought it was gone forever. But I was captured. The soldiers found my research files. They took me, not as a prisoner but as property." Her voice cracked. "They made me work again under dragon command. Not for destruction this time, but to rebuild your palace energy system." Kale stood slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow across her. "So you built part of this palace?" She nodded. "Yes, the energy crystals, the central core, the flame stabilizers. But there's something else, my lord." Her voice turned hollow. "The weapon, the Heart of Ash, wasn't destroyed. It's buried deep below this palace. Under the foundation." Kale's golden eyes glowed fiercely. "Impossible." She shook her head. "It's true. When they forced me to design the palace power system, they used the same technology. The weapon's heart was fused into the palace core to draw energy. I didn't realize it until last week." Kale's expression hardened. "So you mean the weapon that can destroy dragons lies beneath my feet?" "Yes," she whispered. "And I think someone is trying to wake it up." Kale turned away, his mind burning with fury and disbelief. His claws pressed into the marble floor, leaving cracks. "Who?" he asked quietly. Alara's voice shook. "I'm not sure, but I've seen strange things. Shadows in the lower halls, the guards whispering about power surges, machines that move at night. I think it's Lord Varen." Kale's rage returned like fire unleashed. "He was exiled." "Maybe," she said, "but he had access to the old archives. He knows the energy routes. If he found the weapons chamber, he could activate it." Kale turned sharply. "Then we go now. Show me where it is." Alara's eyes widened. "It's dangerous, my lord. The deeper levels are sealed. The air itself burns with old power." He looked down at her. "I am the Dragon Emperor. There is no flame I cannot face." Without waiting, he spread his great wings, gold light flashing across the walls, and strode toward the hidden stairway that led below the palace. Alara followed close behind, fear in her heart. The path grew darker as they descended. The air became thick, heavy with heat and metal. Strange red lights pulsed in the walls, alive like a heartbeat. Alara held a small torch, but Kale's own body glowed faintly, casting light ahead. His claws clicked against the stone, each step echoing through the deep tunnels. Finally, they reached a vast chamber. The ceiling vanished into darkness. In the center stood a machine, massive, ancient, pulsing with crimson light. The Heart of Ash. Alara froze. "It's awake." Kale stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Varen." A voice echoed from the shadows. Calm, cold, familiar. "You should have killed me when you had the chance, Kale." From the far end of the chamber, Lord Varen emerged, his silver scales darkened by soot and energy light. Behind him, strange machines moved, metal wings, glowing orbs, weapons forged from both human and dragon tech. Varen smiled cruelly. "You sit on a throne built above human death and call yourself just. I only want balance. And now, balance will burn." Kale's wings spread wide, fire flaring from his chest. "You play with forces beyond your control. Then stop me," Varen said. "If you can." He turned toward the weapon's control pillar and slammed his claw onto a glowing rune. The entire chamber shook. The Heart of Ash roared to life, red energy rising like fire through the walls. Alara screamed, "He's overloading it. If it reaches the surface, it'll destroy the whole city." Kale roared, "Get behind me!" The chamber blazed with light. The energy veins in the walls flared, connecting to the palace above. Crystals shattered. The floor cracked beneath their feet. Kale lunged toward Varen, his claws glowing with gold fire. The two dragons clashed, flame against flame, light against shadow. Sparks filled the air. Alara stumbled toward the control pillar, her hands bleeding as she pulled wires and shattered crystal panels. "I can stop it," she cried. Kale roared as Varen's strike grazed his chest, leaving a streak of smoke. "Do it," Varen sneered. "She'll die before she finishes." Alara's eyes burned with determination. "Maybe, but I won't let your war take more lives." She slammed her hand on the final sequence, a code only she remembered from her human days. The weapon screamed. A burst of red light shot upward, shaking the palace above. Kale spread his wings, wrapping them around Alara as the explosion erupted. Flames, light, and silence. Then darkness. Far above, The crystal palace trembled as shockwaves rippled through its foundations. Guards fell to their knees, terrified. In the deep chamber below, Kale opened his eyes slowly. The machine had gone dark. Smoke and dust filled the air. He looked down. Alara lay still in his arms, her face pale, her body weak. "Alara," he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. Did it stop?" "Yes," he said quietly. "You saved us." She smiled faintly. "Then, maybe humans can still do something good." Kale held her close, his claws trembling slightly. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Emperor felt fear. Not of war, not of death, but of losing something he could not replace. He whispered, "Rest. I will not let the fire take you." And as the smoke cleared, deep beneath the palace, the red lights of the Heart of Ash flickered once more, as if something inside was still alive. Smoke hung thick in the air. The deep chamber beneath the crystal palace glowed dim red, cracks running through the walls like glowing veins. Kale Draconis stood amid the ruin, his armor scorched, his wings torn. His fire still burned, but faintly, flickering like a candle fighting to stay alive. In his arms lay Alara, motionless, her skin pale and cold. He looked down at her, his voice a whisper. "Wake up." Nothing. He shook her gently, his claws trembling. "Alara." Still nothing. The great Dragon Emperor, the conqueror of worlds, the ruler of flame, fell to his knees. For the first time in centuries, his heart felt truly heavy. He whispered again, softer this time. "You can't leave me now. Not when I finally understand." His voice echoed in the hollow chamber, fading into silence. A faint hum filled the air. The Heart of Ash, the ancient weapon, still glowed faintly at its core, its energy unstable. The explosion had stopped its activation, but not destroyed it completely. Kale looked toward the machine, his eyes burning with a mix of fury and grief. "You won't take her too," he growled. He stood, placing Alara gently on the floor, then spread his wings wide. The fire in his chest flared once more, golden light filling the darkness. Kale walked toward the weapon's heart. With each step, the ground cracked beneath him. The old runes along the walls glowed red, reacting to his energy. "You were made from dragon fire," he said softly. "Then you will die by it." He placed both claws on the weapon's core. The moment he touched it, lightning and flame burst out, wrapping around his body like chains. The pain was unbearable, but he didn't stop. Above, the palace trembled again. Servants screamed. Guards ran to hold the walls as energy surged through the mountain. Inside the chamber, Kale's roar echoed through every stone. "I am Kale Draconis, Emperor of Flame. I command you to burn." The weapon screamed back, its red light flaring violently. The ancient technology fought him, pulling at his energy, trying to consume him. His scales cracked under the pressure, golden light spilling from the wounds. Still, he held on. His wings folded around the core, sealing it inside his fiery embrace. His voice, hoarse but firm, filled the chamber one last time. "You will not end this world." The chamber exploded with light. Above ground, the entire crystal palace blazed with gold fire. The towers glowed like suns. Then, in one single, blinding flash, everything went quiet. The light faded. The palace still stood, but the mountain had changed. The once red cracks had turned to soft white crystal, and smoke drifted gently toward the sky. In the silence that followed, the people of the Dragon Empire looked up, wondering what had happened to their ruler. Deep below, among the ashes of the destroyed weapon, Alara slowly opened her eyes. Her breath came weak and shallow. The air was warm, but calm. The red lights of the weapon were gone. Only faint golden sparks floated in the air like stars. She turned her head and gasped. Kale lay beside the shattered core, his body still, his wings folded over his chest. His armor was blackened, his scales cracked. But even in that stillness, his face looked peaceful, almost human. Alara crawled toward him, tears streaming down her face. "No," she whispered. "Please, no." She placed her hand against his chest. For a long moment, Nothing happened. Then, very faintly, she felt warmth. A heartbeat. Slow, steady, but real. Alara smiled through her tears. "You stubborn dragon." Hours later, the rescue teams reached the lower chambers. They found Alara sitting beside the Emperor, his head resting in her lap. When the guards tried to approach, she raised a hand. "Careful," she said softly. "He's alive." The guards stared in disbelief. One of them knelt. "The Emperor lives?" Alara nodded weakly. "He saved you all. He saved everyone." They carried them both out of the ruins. As they reached the surface, dawn broke over the mountains. The first rays of sunlight touched the palace towers, turning them golden once more. The people gathered outside bowed low as the wounded emperor was carried through the gates. No one spoke. No one dared. They simply watched, their god of fire, their immortal ruler, returning from death itself. Days passed. The palace was rebuilt slowly. The weapon was sealed forever, buried in a chamber no one would ever open again. Alara stayed by Kale's side. She cared for him day and night, cleaning the wounds that no dragon had ever suffered before. His breath was weak, but steady. Sometimes she would talk to him even though he couldn't respond. She would say, "Do you know what humans used to believe, Kale? That dragons were monsters, that they only destroyed. But you proved them wrong. You showed me dragons can protect, too." She smiled faintly. "And maybe humans can be brave enough to stand beside them." On the 7th day, as the sun set, Alara sat beside his bed, her head resting against the table. She had fallen asleep from exhaustion. Kale opened his eyes. The room was quiet. The evening light poured through the crystal windows, painting the walls in gold. He turned his head slowly and saw her, sleeping peacefully, her hand still resting near his. He reached out and touched her fingers gently. Her eyes fluttered open. When she saw him awake, she gasped and covered her mouth. "Kale!" He smiled faintly. "I told you fire does not die easily." She laughed, her eyes filling with tears. "You're alive. For now," he said softly. "And that's enough." She looked at him seriously. "You saved me. You saved the whole empire." "Why?" Kale's golden eyes softened. "Because you reminded me of something I had forgotten." "What's that?" she asked quietly. He smiled. A small, honest smile that she had never seen before. That even fire can protect, not just destroy. That night, Kale rose from his bed and walked to the balcony, overlooking the rebuilt city. The stars shone bright above, and the wind carried the soft hum of life returning. Alara joined him, standing silently beside him. "Will the dragons and humans ever live in peace?" she asked. Kale took a deep breath, the cool air mixing with the faint smoke from his chest. "Perhaps not today, but someday, maybe." He turned to her. "And when that day comes, it will be because someone believed in it. Someone like you." Alara smiled. "Then I'll keep believing." Kale nodded slowly. "Do that, and I'll keep the fire burning." The two of them stood together as the wind swept across the balcony. The city lights shimmered below like tiny stars. For a moment, everything was still. No war, no pain, no hatred. Just two souls who had survived the flames. In the final rays of dawn, the Dragon Emperor looked out at his kingdom and whispered, almost to himself, "Forgiveness is the fire that never dies." And beside him, the human who once feared dragons smiled quietly, knowing the truth at last. Even fire can have a heart.